So
Nope.
it's going live. Now we are.
All right, we're live. Excellent.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us for our webinar, our live webinar for feeding fussy toddler boys. We're really pleased to be doing this. I'm Meg, I'm a dietitian, also mum of 3 little boys. And I'm really looking forward to today. As a dietitian, I'm really obviously believe in nutrition, but I'm getting a little bit worried and tired of seeing so many mums and dads being made to feel really confused and insecure and anxious and like they're doing things wrong in the way that they feed their kids. And there's so much nutrition noise out there in society, and especially the internet. Lots of judgment, lots of opinions, and it's causing heaps of stress and making people, it's actually making it harder for people to feed their kids and to feel confident in doing that. So I'm really looking forward to working through some of that and helping you guys find a path where you feel a bit more confident and relaxed about what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Big thing about what I do is all about having happy meal times. So all about bringing the happy, taking away the stress. So I'm Simone. I'm from Play With Food. I am qualified in SOS feeding therapy. So my area of experience is more with the actual throes of the sensory processes involved in eating. So I'll be talking a little bit of that while Meg's balancing me out with her nutrition side. And yeah, so what we've got...
we do need to let you know that obviously this doesn't take place of individual advice. That's just our little disclaimer that we need to make sure.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. If you still want a little bit more tailored advice for you after this, we definitely recommend contacting one of us to get involved and really nut it out for you in your specific case. What we aim to hopefully get you guys to do out of this webinar is to maybe take one action. So we're going to go through a whole lot of different strategies and ideas, but having that one action will really help you start on your journey. It's not always about changing everything straight away and off the bat, because that's going to be potentially more stressful.
That's right.
So really want to keep the stress levels down and approach this. That's why you've got lifetime access. You can come back and watch us anytime you want.
And you'll also, if you download the PDF of the handouts, we'll be going through most of the stuff there as we're talking, but you can obviously refer back to it as you go. So we really want to reassure you that you are the best person for feeding your child. We really want to help you feel confident and relaxed in your ability and in your role, so you can pass that confidence on to your kids as they learn to become competent eaters. So eating is it's a learning process, and it's different for kids than it is for adults. And so with a bit of guidance from us, we're confident that people can find how to apply this information in their own unique circumstance. So, big question, is feeding toddler boys different to feeding girls? And look, our answer is actually often not. However, we see in our practice it's really disproportionate, the number of parents or caregivers of boys seeking our help compared to those of girls. I'm sort of like 90%, 10%. And I also see a significant chunk of boys, older boys, sort of 8, 9, and 10 years old, being brought in because it's just reached the point where the parents need assistance with that. And I've never had a girl brought at that age specifically because of the fussiness. They might be brought for other issues, and then I can look, actually, I think the root cause of what's going on here is actually challenges around their eating, but there's definitely more boys struggling with this than girls.
Yeah, like Meg said, we've both got the same experience. I definitely get inquiries from parents of boys, toddler boys, a lot more than inquiries of any other demographic. And it's definitely not to say that girls don't exhibit the same tendencies. What there is some study that backs up the way boys exert some of their frustrations over meal times is to throw tantrums a little bit more often, throw food, and they're the sort of behaviours that actually induce a bit more stress than what a girl may behaviours tend to be like. And that's just coming from research and some anecdotal experience. But we won't harp on whether this is a boy-girl thing too much. It's just we wanted to call the webinar something. and to highlight that the pain points we're addressing today really are those mealtime struggles with children between 1 and 3 years old, where communication skills are still developing rapidly, but aren't at the point where you can have a rational conversation with them.
Cool. So the big framework in which we hang our practice, we're quite different modes of practice, but it actually hangs from the same framework, which is Ellen Satter's division of responsibility. So Ellen Satter, she really is the world leader in feeding kids and in setting up structures and patterns where there is a predictability to what's going to happen for the kid and also for the parents, where there's a lot of parents advocating for the child. So rather than trying to exert their will on you will eat this and onto the child, actually drawing it out from the kid. So it's a real two-way respectful. And it sounds very fairy, but it's actually deeply practical, and there's a lot of research around it. And so the overall framework is that the parent has their responsibilities and the child has their responsibilities. And it's the parent's job to decide what is offered, to decide when food is offered to the child and where. And that's where it ends. It's the child's job to determine whether they eat and how much they eat. And that can come out it'll look different in different families. The routines look different, the structure look different. But what we find is that often the stress points for parents is when either the child is being led into what should be the parent's responsibility. So the child is being said, oh, what do you want to eat for dinner? Or the child comes into the kitchen and says, I want food. And the parent goes, oh, sure, what do you want? Often that can cause parents to just constantly feel like short order cooks, that constantly in the kitchen and just feeding their child all day, and it's really quite stressful. Or on the flip side of that, if the parent steps over into wanting to determine how much the child eats, and it's when we come to some force feeding, or it can just be through pressure, and we'll talk a bit about that later on. That's often where these problems show up. So a nice little phrase to have in the back of your mind from Ellen Satter is, the parent provides, the child decides. And it's one of those things to just bring to your mind if you're in a mealtime and you're feeling really stressed, just think, hang on a minute, what's my responsibility? What's the child's responsibility? And is something going wrong there? Really often, mums and dads and a lot of health professionals as well actually go straight to trying to fix fussy eating by getting the food right. But it's really not a good place to start. So in your PDF, the nutrition information is at the we're just going to talk about it last. Because it's actually not a good place to start by trying to get the food right. There's a part of short order cooking, and there are so many other things affecting the behaviour of eating where we really need to be looking.
Yeah, I can definitely say, from personal experience, it's really that when, where, and what the parents really need to focus on in terms of I'm feeding my child 4 meals a day. That's when I'm doing it. And kind of getting their routine and structure right. And that helps the child then not feel like they have to come in and take over that responsibility off the parent, because children between 1 and 3 shouldn't be assuming their parents' responsibility in feeding.
No, and if they are being, if things are really all over the place and the child can't know for sure, I'm going to get fed every 2 hours, every 2.5 hours, depending on the age and what's going on, that's when they're much more likely to start exhibiting some really difficult behaviours around being really demanding around food. If the time goes too long, they might actually get too tired. And so then they're not in a good place to actually eat, or they may actually be feeling really anxious and stressed, and anxiety subdues your appetite. And so then they can actually be hungry, but not feeling like hungry, like they've got an empty tummy, but they're not feeling hungry because they've come to the table stressed. So if we can get them, then what we're really going to focus on for the next little while is getting them to the table in a manner that they're ready to make the most of that meal time.
So I'm going to talk about some of the root causes of fussy eating behaviours today, mostly because I want parents to know the actual reason for the child starting to be fussy is generally never them.
Yes,
so
not the parents' fault.
Take a big sigh of relief, because the parents haven't caused fussy eating behaviour. Fussy eating behaviour comes potentially from a medical reason. So children on the spectrum, heart conditions, cancer treatments, all those sort of medical things that may have had intervention in their life will cause there to be potentially some fussy eating down the track. A history of choking or painful food memories. So this is something that is very hard for some kids, and that kind of ties in with allergies and sensitivities as well. Delayed oral motor skills. So if we've been on, say, purees for a very prolonged period of time and we haven't learned that bite and pull motion and being able to get that food from the there under your big teeth, some big tongue lateralization skills. This is a matter of introducing solids and continuing that progress to keep getting that oral motor development happening, because if we try and go from a puree to something that's like a mixed texture, like a risotto, it's actually not the right way to go from a oral motor point of view and a sensory point of view. So you need to be able to have built up different skills through different foods. For oral motor development. Other developmental delays, so this can come down to communication comprehension delays, speech delays, illness and sleep routines. These are big ones, and you've probably noticed it. Kids get fussier when they're tired. It basically means their threshold for absorbing a new food or even like a harder food than they like, it's just lower. It's the same as us. When we feel tired or exhausted, it's so much easier to bite into a chocolate bar that's totally been manufactured for us to get exactly what we want right then and there from a emotional and a oral motor point of view. You know, chocolate bars don't come that high that are easy to bite into. They come at the perfect height and everything like that. So same for us. Tired, illness, sleep. It happens for children too. They're going to want to go for the easy foods. So that's where things like, you know, even sweet fruit or in some crusket, something that's nice and easy for them to eat is going to be what they're going to prefer when they haven't got their threshold high enough. Cognitive leaps is a major one. So this is sort of at 18 months. I sometimes see it with the kids even younger. But this is when they start to go, okay, beforehand I was sensory motor, I was doing what my mum did, I was part of her, or, you know, there's that whole connection. And they basically just go with the learnt behaviour. Yeah. Once we start going through a cognitive leap, becoming a pre-operational thinking level, this is when imagination starts. We are busy in our new world. So kids also need a lot more to bring them back from this whole new world that they're exploring with their mind to then want to take on something that's very hard from a sensory point of view. So we'll talk about sensory a whole lot more coming up. Nutritional deficiencies can cause some fussy eating behaviour, but it's also a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario as to whether or not it really is the original root cause or if it's sort of a symptom that then exacerbates it and makes a downward spiral. So you might see different articles on the line, nutritional noise.
Anecdotal stuff, oh, they're deficient in this if they're fussy eating. The likelihood of that actually being the root cause is pretty low. And even so, correcting that deficiency won't necessarily affect these now entrenched behaviours around food. I don't read the comment section of these things because it drives me crazy. All this opinion stuff about, oh, it's just this, it's just that, it's just this. And a lot of blame directed to parents. Oh, if they're just pandering or they're just doing this, it's really, really unhelpful. So we want you to make sure you know that we know there are so many different reasons why this can happen. We've just gone through a lot, and they can, again, in those categories, they're like off so many different options that could have been part of the problem.
So these are sort of root causes why it started, and it's not to say that fixing only the root cause is going to happen, because by the time behaviours become to a point where we're getting stressed, we've actually added on a couple of more layers that we now have to kind of dig through to get back to that root cause and back to redressing sort of thing. So there always could be multiple root causes happening simultaneously. So I've seen it a lot where it's illness plus sleep issues, and then we go and add in that cognitively, and basically routine's gone, this is gone, and then all of a sudden we're a couple of months down the track and it's like, oh, this fussy eating hasn't gone away. What can I do? So the main thing is, even though children may all have different fussy eating symptoms, not all symptoms are even the same. So there may be some children that are having a massive sensory reaction, like really intimidated and overwhelmed by what's on their plate, but instead of hopping down and running away from the table or chucking a tantrum or throwing their food, they may just avert their gaze and ignore what's on their plate and shut down. And that can be just as an extreme and just as stressful for that parent as it might have been for a parent who has a child who is constantly chucking a tantrum on the floor. So definitely never to say, stress comes in so many different ways, and definitely here to help you out with the stress.
And again, back to, you'll know your child best, and you'll know, or might need a little bit of guidance and open some other possibilities of what it might be. But at the end of the day, you'll be able to see what's happening and know what's going on for your child.
And a good segue there with the end of the day, because I'm going to talk a bit now about the sensory cup. This is sort of like a metaphor where I kind of talk about a basic cup. Say throughout my day, I'm getting these little sensory inputs added more and more and more into my cup. I have a threshold. My cup isn't an infinite amount. I can't just absorb every input that's coming into my world and just take it in my stride. I'll be able to do that for a bit of it, but they'll get to a point where I'm absolutely brimming. Same as my kids and everyone's kids. We've got different thresholds. Thing is, we don't actually know how big everyone's cup is. And everyone's cup is a bit different size for different sensory inputs. So we've got 7 sensory systems. Okay, we get taught at school we've got 5. So we know 5. I'll talk about the other 2 as well. But you've got visual inputs that are coming in at you all day. You've got sound inputs coming in at you all day. Touch. You might have noticed your child has different likes and dislikes when it comes to things that they do touch, because that's a lot of input.
Yeah, like there's kids who just love sand and Play-Doh and getting grubby, and they don't care at all. And then there's the kids who, you've got to get this off my hands right now or I'm going to freak out. It's different ways of...
You have just crossed my threshold. I'm brimming. This is not happening. So we've got our normal senses, and then the other 2 sensory systems that do get overwhelmed as well are things like our proprioceptive system, which is how we know where we are in the world. So when we're taking steps and we get that feedback of taking steps, we know how to climb the stairs. And the other one is the vestibular system, is more that sort of up and down motion. So you get a really good balance. So things like being on a swing, some kids will love it. That's a lot of vestibular input. Other kids will hate being on the swing. So it's all different for every child. Every day almost has a different aspect as to what is raising and lowering that threshold for them. So what we'll be talking about next is pretty much how do we actually get kids ready for a mealtime, because we need to think about their sensory cup. How are we going to make this as successful as possible, because, we all have to have a bit of room left, because we're going to try and have a whole lot of input coming in.
Eating is assault on the senses. Huge. All your senses are being involved there. With eating. So it can be really quite challenging, like genuinely challenging for kids who say, oh, just eat it. Well, actually, it's not as simple.
Eating's going to just throw me over the edge right now. So let's talk about how do we get this cup a little bit emptier before we even think about having food. So what we've got on the handout is a list of exercises. That's the best thing, some physical input. It doesn't have to involve expensive equipment, but trampoline is great, going for a bike ride is great, using a Swiss ball is great, using a swing is great, but in terms of freebie exercise, star jumps, pushing the wall, getting some way to get that little bit of a release. Yeah, get up, dance, boogie.
It doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need like 20 minutes of this. It just needs to be some.
We just need a little bit of exercise. Climbing the stairs, it might just be, all right, go, if you've got stairs at your house, up and down 3 times. Let's do it. And that's it. You might be enough for modulating your child. So what we're looking at here, and you will know your child the best, is how to modulate them, how to make sure that they've come out of their world where they're like thinking about this thing, or they've been on the screen, or they've been reading a book, or they've been doing a puzzle, or they've been elsewhere engaged in their newfound imagination. And we want to get them ready and have some space in that cup ready for taking on some new challenges.
And sometimes it will be simply they've been to stop going from sitting to sitting, because for some kids who perhaps aren't actually challenged from a sensory point of view and have plenty of room in their cup, they still, particularly always, it's a long time to sit. So if you've had them in front of the TV while you were preparing dinner, or sitting in their high chair already at the bench while you're preparing dinner, and then you move them to the high chair at the dinner table or get them to sit up, they're going to struggle to sit still enough that it's not interrupting on their ability to eat. So we need to expect that our kids are going to move and wriggle a little bit at meal times, and not expect too much from that. But if they have been used up, or they're sitting still ability, just sitting watching TV, and then you've cut them off halfway through and said, come sit straight up, they've been sitting, they're already a bit negative because you've already taken something away from them that they wanted. So they're already feeling a bit stressed about that at all. They've already got a bit of a negative view of the meals. And so part of having those sort of exercises is part of the transitioning process for those kids as well. So we do need to make allowance that there's going to be some movement and squirming for our kids at the table. And as they get older, it should reduce, and we can set really good expectations about how much wriggling we allow. And just want to talk about posturing a bit in a little while, which is really important. So we need to expect some, and not create stress for ourselves and our kids by harping on about them being still and always using cutlery. But it obviously needs to not be so hard for them to sit at that level of stillness that it's really impeding on this opportunity, or distracting from their opportunity to eat at the mealtime.
Yeah, and like I said, you're the best at working out what's going to work for your child. So really take a step back, look at and observe how they react to different inputs. I'm going to say my 4-year-old loves vestibular input for her reset. So that means I don't have a swing in the middle of my kitchen. So I will pick her up and actually swing her upside down 4 or 5 times, and it just gets her all reset. I mean, that doesn't take me that long to do, and I've picked her thing that she loves. My 2-year-old loves noise. Her sensory craving and desire is noise. So she's at the moment, we're very princess obsessed little 2-year-old girl, but she likes singing the song from, what's it called? Sleeping Beauty. And so I'll say, let's sing that song, and it just takes her from where she was. She resets herself, and we're no longer having a tantrum or deciding that, no, I don't want to go wash my hands. She's like, oh, we can sing that song on our way to wash our hands. Okay. And that's her thing. So you need to chalk it up to experience and realize that you're going to have some good learns when it comes to what works for your child before meal times.
Yeah, my kids need to get out, really, if possible, get outside. For them, I think it's the space thing really helps them to just settle, even if they're doing something really active outside. They're just much calmer, more ready to sit. So rainy days are much harder for us. And so I've got to be even more proactive at how I transition them on those rainy days, because I know that I've got to get the steps in the right order, or dinner time's going to be harder. They're still going to eat, they eat everything. They're great. I haven't had a lot of challenges with fussy eating with the kids, mostly because I knew this stuff and was able to apply it. I wish I'd learned about the first one, because he was challenging, because I didn't know any of this stuff.
That's okay.
So you'll know what works you start to learn what works and what doesn't. Experiment around a bit, have a play around with us, try different things, and have a think about what worked and what didn't. And if you have a meal that out of the blue, the kids are amazing and they're sitting there and they're, you know, sensibly eating, you didn't actually feel like you've done anything, just thinking back to their day might give you some clues as to what happened, or vice versa. If, you know, you expected that it's going to be an easy meal because had a, you know, it's food that generally is well accepted and it's not, having to think about what happened in that transition. Did something happen that interrupted that flow?
You'll get a lot of good non-verbal and verbal cues about what went wrong. So it's a matter of being engaged for that period of time. And I know as a parent, it's not always easy to be all switched on at that time of day. You actually want to just tune out too. But just trying to remember yourself. Bigger breath. It's only going to be 20 minutes. So let's focus and do that and help them through it. So in terms of a pre-meal time routine, I'll sort of step you through some steps I like to take. So the first thing would be setting the table together, or definitely some warning signs that dinner's coming. Even though timers are good. For 1 to 3 year olds, we're still trying to grapple with the concept of time. So always saying 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. I'm like, well, you just said 2 minutes 5 minutes ago. Try and be a bit realistic with it. But if it's not going to work, have it, we're going to do this after you finish that puzzle, or mummy's going to come down, we're going to colour for a little while. And then when mummy says we're going to stop colouring, and you're giving them a warning and a process that they're going to follow.
Yeah. I mean, no one likes the middle of being in something and told you have to stop that right now and come sit up.
Yeah.
Well, you immediately go, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah, as human beings, we actually don't like change.
No, I mean,
we're resistant to it. So, it's sometimes a little bit of walk in their shoes and just have a think, what do I want? I'm like, I like a 5-minute warning before dinner. Washing hands together. This is a great routine because, one, you have to walk somewhere, so you're getting a little bit of proprioceptive input and a bit of chatter while we're going, and it's that little bit of a turn off from what we were doing before. And the best tip is this can be replicated anywhere. When we go to grandma's house for dinner, when we go to the restaurant for dinner, we can always hop up, walk over and go wash our hands. Food courts have bathrooms everywhere. There's a way for you to have this as part of your routine no matter where you go. Everyone helps bring food to the middle of the table. And this is another one for me. I probably even could put it up the top because I bring my hot food to the table and then I start the mealtime routine with the girls, because then by the time I get them back to the table, it's not burning hot and I haven't lost that first 5 minutes of the meal going, blow on that, blow on that, blow on that. It's hot. It's hot.
Yeah, it's really important.
Getting that whole negative frame set in there where they were like, I just want to eat it and now I don't. Walk away. So we don't want to waste that time.
No, especially anecdotally, little boys have less time where you're going to get them sitting happily. I know certainly in my house with Oscar, my 2-year-old, I reckon on a good day, I've got 8 minutes max with him, happy to sit before he says, I had enough, now please get down. So if we've wasted 3, 4, 5 minutes of that waiting for the food to get to eating temperature, there's just not going to be opportunity when he's able to eat. So we need to work back from that. So the kids all help bring food to the middle of the table, and then we go and do the rest.
Yeah, and we're not talking fancy platters or anything.
Oh no!
I bring my pots and pans to the middle of the table, and they cool down well and truly by the time we get to eating it.
Tip I got from Simone, to put it in whatever container it's going to go in the fridge in, bring it to the table in that. Why don't even one of those sturdy one, little takeaway container or whatever it's going to be stored
Especially
in.
if it's going to be you made enough for lunch the next day. Just put it in what you were going to put it in the fridge in. Another big one for parents here: focus, engage, and positively encourage the children throughout this process. It's so easy for us. Our fun thing to do at this time of day is scroll through Facebook. So we have to go, okay, no, I'm focused, I'm engaged, and I'm positively encouraging them during this process, getting ready to go to the meal table. A little note, if we're just feeling really rushed, you can still sort of do a pre-meal time routine. Just have it a little bit modified, like have some still warning signs that dinner's coming, have washers or wipes available at the table for that hand washing. That's really good sensory input, just doing that. And it's also a cup emptying sensory thing for them to do, especially if you find they do have some tactile responses that, like, say they're not into Play-Doh or they're not into sand pits, that's a good indication that we need to build some resilience there by getting that system engaged before we then delve into our food. Have everything you need on the table ready to go. The more you hop up and hover and go back to the kitchen, back and forward, the less likely they are to understand that they need to sit at the table.
Yeah.
So if you are sitting there with them,
This
make it a point.
The root cause for our up and down troubles that we had earlier is that I was always up and down. Oh, I'll get a sauce. Oh, I'll get a cup of drink. Oh, I'll get this. Oh, I'll get that. Up and down, up and down, up and down. And partly was because I was plating food in the kitchen and then bringing it over, and then I was thinking, oh, you might want a bit more of that, and then I was up. And so by having everything on the table, in the middle of the table, and the kids know that they need, cutlery, and they need the cups, and we need the jug of water, sitting. Because as soon as I'm up, because I eat just me and the boys most nights. My husband's only home 1 or 2 nights a week. If I'm up, it's all over. Like, it's just, not good.
No, it's pretty much end of meal time.
It is. It's a sign.
It's a sign that it's okay to get up now. I'm the same. If the girls want anything extra and I haven't brought it to the table, I say to them, okay, but mummy's finishing her dinner first.
Yeah.
And so that's the same. If there was only a limited amount of their preferred food available at the table, I don't mind them having more, but I do mind if I don't get to eat. So I prioritise my eating.
Yeah. Hot meals back on the table for mums.
And it makes me less stressed if I'm so hungry and I just want to eat. I'm like, no.
Because you already feel, by the end of the day, I don't know about you, but by the end of the day, I already feel like I've been doing enough all day for these people, and it's still not enough. And so then I can get stressed and feel, taken for granted and all that, that lovely stuff. And the kids feed off that. They'll feel it. Even if I keep a lid on it, which sometimes I do, but often I don't, they'll feel that resentment. They'll feel that irritation. And it just raises that stress of the whole table.
It is always really important to look after you as well.
Yeah.
And think about where you are. The amount of times I just get up and have to be like, okay, 5 deep breaths and push on a couple of walls, and then I'll sit down too, because I need to empty my sensory cup. I can't just go from a day of work, walk in the door, and then be like, mum extraordinaire.
Kids asking you stuff.
So what you might want to do is make even like a little visual checklist about what you need to bring to the table. So it might be, I know they're only maybe 1-year-old, but they can understand. I get my bowl.
Yeah.
You get your bowl. You can get your bowl. And even if that's their only responsibility for getting ready for the mealtime, and you've put the bowl somewhere they can get, which is really important, that can help them understand that there is a pre-mealtime routine.
Yeah.
And it gets them ready to eat.
Yeah. And trying to frame it positively, rather than, especially if you've got older kids as well, you can get in the habit, I know I certainly do, of just telling them what to do. You do this, you do this. You do this. Can you do this? Can you do this? And turning around and just saying, hey, you can do this. You've got this. That's your job, and you know how to do this. Immediately they go, oh yeah, I do know how to do this. It is my job. It's really subtle sometimes, but once you're aware of it and aware of the different meanings and what the kids are going to hear, if you change it up a little bit, you will, not always, but you will see a difference in their ability to be able to do it.
So next thing, I'll talk about some language. But basically have your positive mantra rehearsed, the one that you tell yourself. The main one you can do is I can do this. I got this. Sometimes I was like a bit airy-fairy, positive thinking stuff. It wasn't really my cup of tea, but I can see how the difference now as a mum, just going and going, I can do this.
Yeah. Rather than, mealtime again, this is going to be awful.
They're going to throw their food. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I can do this.
I know my responsibilities. I do the what, where, and when. I can do that. And then my job is done.
Yeah. And I also have to feed myself.
And I've got to feed myself.
And avoiding negative words like no and don't. You have to be really specific with the expectations from the kids. So especially in these toddler years, we might hear ourselves going, no, don't, get down constantly. So instead of that, what we want is a positive, this is exactly what you're going to do. So instead of no, don't throw the food off the table, we change that around to be food stays on the table. we have given them nothing to question about that. If we go, no, don't throw the food off the table, they're like, what am I going to do with this? They either then feel like they have to challenge you further by continuing to do the thing you didn't want them to do, or they're left going, but you haven't given me the safe opt-out option. What am I supposed to do with this? So what we can say is food stays on the table. You can put it in your learning bowl. You can put it here. You can put it on mummy's plate. You can put it in your serviette. You can put it off to the placemat. You've given them exactly what they needed to hear at that point in time. Food stays on the table. Okay, got that. And if I don't want it on my plate, I've got something I can do with it safely. And you also know what to expect from your child. So it makes it easier. You've just basically turned a negative situation that could potentially happen at every single mealtime into a no argument. It's just done. That's it. It will take a little bit of repetition to get it understood, because repetition is what kids love at this age. That's why you find all the nursery rhyme books. It's repeating the same
my kids want to read the same book
every night. They love repetition. So if you have your little positive mantras and they only hear food stays on the table, food stays on the table, food, guess where food stays? On the table. So we just got to kind of get used to the fact that we do repeat ourselves, but let's not be repeating the wrong phrases or ambiguous phrases. Oh, mummy loves this. Like, that means nothing to them. But, oh, that broccoli is green. Yeah, the broccoli is definitely green. Yep. They're learning these words. The more vocab you can give to them, the more they're going to thrive, the more they're going to be able to say it back to you.
Yep.
Yeah. Sitting at the table too, not hovering or darting back and forward. We've said that. So this is all setting mealtime expectations, not just expectations of you, but by you role modeling what is expected at the dinner table, they're more likely to get that. Yeah. Allowing for safe opt-out strategies. So that's where we talked about having a learning bowl or a serviette or somewhere that's safe for them to put food that they're finding too overwhelming.
Yeah.
If they've started the meal with a nice empty plate and then have gotten the food from the middle of the table, they're less likely to be overwhelmed by it.
Yep.
I've been talking a lot lately about blank space. It's my favorite thing. Make sure your plate has some blank space for the kids. They don't need it to be so super busy. They need to rest. And the best thing about blank space is when they do start using their cutlery, they've got room to start using it properly. I
also find the learning plate really helpful for that transitioning from being in the habit of you deciding what goes on their plate. So we decide what is offered, that's in the division of responsibility, but whether they eat it or not or how much they eat is up to them. So if you're going to say to a child, from the middle of the food, from the middle of the table, do you want rice? And they say no, and then you put rice on their plate, that's immediately then go, whoa, I've got no say in this. I just said no. Whereas if you go, sure, no worries, honey, that's fine. Let's put a little bit on your learning plate. You don't have to eat it.
Yeah. So when you're in charge of the what,
yeah.
It's tonight we've got rice. Here's a bit for your plate or your learning bowl. They might go, oh, learning bowl tonight. Yeah. But, eventually, so they've had it in their learning bowl.
Because the habit is of so many mums, and I've caught myself doing it, I'll just have a little bit. But again, they've just said no, and you've just gone, no, just have a little bit, which again can actually send the whole meal down a completely different path.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have an out from your habit to then say to put it on, if you've got an opt out, which is okay, well, I'll put a little bit here, you don't have to eat it. Which was something I had to start doing with kids, having done the other way of plating in the kitchen or going, okay, I'm putting it on their plate anyway. It was helpful for me.
Yeah.
And the number of times that the child, my kids, won't always happen, will go, they'll eat it anyway, just because they got to decide that.
Yeah.
So it's the
whole, you can have rice on your plate or learning bowl. They've gotten to control where it went, but you have still been in charge of what, because it still went there.
Yeah.
It's definitely right. On their plate or in their learning plate or in their opt-out zone, whatever you choose as their child's opt-out area. So Meg said she has a placemat and the kids can put it onto the placemat. I'm like, that's good, saves an extra dish to wash up.
Yeah, but then I've decided that's still the case if I forget the learning bowls, because sometimes I forget things. So anyone who's telling you it is doesn't always happen perfectly. But this is where we're heading.
Yeah. And the same thing as a safe opt-out strategy, being able to spit their food out. If it's gone in their mouth and they feel overwhelmed by it, say that food, I thought it would only take my cup to here. It's actually overflown. They want to spit it out.
Yeah.
And you've got to be like, oh, it's okay. You can spit it out.
Because the first time I said this to one of the kids, my husband, he was just like, I can't spit out food. I'm like, well, I've got a serviette. And the point is, yep, good on you for having a go. You didn't want to swallow it. That's fine. You can spit it out.
Yeah.
And it's again because we're teaching them. We're not expecting them to get it right first go. It's educating them in behaviour, yes, but also in food.
Yeah.
So
another one of my favourite sayings: eating's not pass fail.
Yeah,
it's a learning process.
It is.
So if they have gotten the confidence to put that food in their mouth and then they've had a little bit of that was so not what I thought it was going to be, I'd rather hear, you know what, that's all right, do this, and you've got
then you have to swallow it.
Safe way, other than don't do that. And I'm like, but my only option is now to defy you because I can't actually swallow this. I am so uncomfortable right now. I can't swallow this.
Yeah.
So trying to be positive even when it's something that's not normally a condoned behavior.
Yeah.
But when you recognize that this behavior of trying a food is actually helping them learn more about it and being okay with their learning process, you're going to be less stressed as well, because the more you say no, the more you get stressed as well. The more negative your language is, the more you become negative.
Yeah, and also start to question, it's all not working, what am I doing wrong? Which you might not be doing, may not be doing things, or just the child can't deal with that. There's nothing wrong with the food, it's just they can't deal with it in that situation.
So the next thing is about meal refusal. Another good one here to do is inner monologue, what you're thinking. It's so easy to go, what didn't you like? What's this? And ask so many questions. And that's another one where you're starting to give over your responsibility in that mealtime. So inner monologue, your root cause analysis to why is this meal not being touched? Especially if they haven't actually really even looked at the meal and they're saying they don't want it. Chances are it's not even the food. Okay.
So it's not going to be helpful to say, but you ate it yesterday, because it's not.
That's not the same day. My cups are totally different today, Mum. Did you not know that? We're basically saying in a monologue what's gone on, take a breath and then try and work out, okay, I might just remodulate them. So hop up from the table, do your star jumps, do something, come back to the table. It might just take an extra 10 seconds, 30 seconds. We're not talking about going and running a marathon and coming back. It's just a quick reset, and then help them modulate, check their posture. What you want to see at this age is 90 degrees at the ankles, so having their feet supported, 90 degrees at the knee, and 90 degrees at the hip.
Yeah, and often high chairs have their legs really dangling. And I don't know if you've ever yourself, been on a bar stool and there's nowhere to put your feet, and you feel really not quite steady, and you wouldn't want to eat a meal sitting there with your legs dangling. And yet we do this to our kids constantly. Put them somewhere where they're actually not completely stable and they're feeling uneasy about that. We know they're safe, they're not going to fall out, but they don't necessarily know that.
So our body's number one priority is to protect our brain, not to eat. So if we're feeling like our brain is potentially in jeopardy, we're not going to eat. So getting that posture right is really important, and even you'll notice you're going to be a lot more engaged the more you're like, okay, sit up straight, get some feet support. As a short person myself, my life is constantly dangling feet, but it makes me feel so much better when I can get my feet planted on the ground. So definitely for your kids too.
And also older kids, if you're like, we have bench seating, it's terrible because not only are their feet not reaching the ground, but there's nothing to lean back against. So they're teetering, and it's it's a long time for me to realize this is why I'm constantly saying, sit on your bottom, and they're up and they're down and they're standing on one foot and they're sitting with their legs crossed. And
another good one is, if you really haven't got a way to handle it, letting them eat on their knees at the table, because if they're eating at their knees, they're less, they're more stable. But it's about working out why are they wriggling or getting down so often. It can come back to posture.
Sorry, you only got to ankles.
That's okay. Ankles. Oh, I said everything.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
the whole I call it the staircase. You basically want to look like a staircase. Chunk out what's acceptable and what happens next and so forth. Kids love to know what's happening in a routine. And this also helps you stop using bribery language. That if this, then you get that. No, it's just we're eating dinner, then it's shower time, then there's some milk. There's no questions. That's our process. If you have to reiterate that process of what's going to happen 20 times, fine. But they will get comfortable with knowing that there is a process, and they love this repetition. So the more you can chunk out what is acceptable, what's happening. No, first we're eating at the table, we're all sitting together, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. It stops you thinking, oh, if you eat your broccoli, you get your dessert, because in the end, you're going to have the dessert potentially anyway.
Yeah, well, we actually do.
And you've introduced some not so great language.
Yeah, that's right. I think, I'll have to eat it makes them think, oh, what's wrong with this, that I have to eat this first before I get that. And something that can work really, really well is to actually have all the food at the same time. I portion out desserts, like everyone says, sort of forbidden foods, but they get that at the same time. So there's absolutely no way that they could think, oh, I have to eat this to get my dessert. And it's only a small portion, and so one of them eats all the main and then the dessert. The other one sort of flips between the two, and Oscar, the baby, just actually dips the beans or whatever in the yogurt, and it's disgusting. But he's learning and he's eating and he's sitting there. That really stops any, because we were brought up a lot saying you've got to finish all on your plate. So it's habitual. It's in there. It comes out of our mouths without us even thinking about it. So actually planning to take that decision away from yourself in potentially a moment of stress. Yeah.
So you don't want to have that as your fallback language because the other things didn't work out so well. So it's just a reminder for you, okay, I'm just chunking it out. I'm not using any other language here. Yeah. And it's okay to repeat yourself. You're probably used to it anyway, but even at the mealtime, the more you repeat, the more they learn. And then the next thing I have is a cleanup time routine. I think it's really important for kids to understand there's finality. The kitchen is shut after the mealtime, because I am the parent and I decide the when, the what and the where. But the when is really important. So having a cleanup routine, it also, one, lets you have the kids readdress what was on their plates. Yep. So if there is food that went to the learning bowl and didn't really get a look in, we still take our food from the learning bowl and we're going to put it into the bin or whatever. We pack away all the food that's left over in the middle of the table back to the fridge. That's the best thing about having it in the middle of the table. There's not as much waste because you haven't portioned out all this food on the table that you then onto their plate that you then have to scrape into the bin. So sure, there might be a little bit of wastage in terms of you've exposed them to these new foods, and the learning bowl might be a little bit full for the first few times we're starting with this. But what you get them to do is either scrape it into the bin or kiss it goodbye or give it a lick goodbye, those sort of interactions, and you only just pitch the interaction just above what they would be comfortable with. So if they have seriously gone, okay, you can put the rice just in my bowl, but they haven't looked at it again, I wouldn't be then saying, okay, kiss the rice goodbye. No. I'd be going, oh, can you just scrape the rice in with your hand, and here I've got your washer ready for you to wash your hand after a while if you didn't like that tactile stimulus. If you didn't like touching it, sorry, you don't say that to kids. If you didn't like that tactile stimulus, But that's basically what we're trying to do, is give them something that they can do with the food at cleanup time so that they've interacted with it. And that unfamiliar food starts climbing up that hierarchy towards eating it, even if it's ever so slowly. Some foods will take 4 million goes like that. Other foods will be straight up in the mouth and you're like, you ate that brand new food, but you don't eat sensory properties and what we're going to be able to accept. And on any given day, I have my own thresholds that let me accept a new food or not accept a new food.
And there's a lot of that we're out of control, that we don't have control over. And so having the setup and the systems, and so it's all predictable for them, that really helps. Can help us no matter what's happened in the day. We're getting them the best opportunity to eat at that mealtime. It's not all going to be, you know, holding hands and singing lullabies while we're eating, but it'll be less stressful, significantly less stressful. I'm closing the kitchen as well, so we put it in the bin and then we say, hey, the kitchen is closed. The next meal is where the parent, we decided when, around about 2 hours is about 2 to 3 hours, no more than 3 for, you know, your under twos, when the next meal being offered is. So just being really clear about that the kitchen is closed. And it can sound like, and I know as I hear us talk, it sounds like, oh, this is so much to do. You're giving me all, I've got to have the washer ready and I've got to do this and I've got to do this, got to do this. But what you'll find is that between meals, there's nothing to do around the meals. So you've got the little bit beforehand, yep, you've got to do your lead up, but you're not in the kitchen constantly. The kids aren't coming in, they're not going to the fridge, or if they are going to the fridge, they're not getting any food because they don't get to decide that, they're the child. So it really, really helps actually get back that time between meals. Yeah. That you can go into the kitchen to make yourself a cup of tea and not be, you know, not have a child screaming at you that they want food. So no, the next meal is this at this time. Yeah. So it helps you get that time back, and you're not making decisions on the fly about, oh, will I give you this one? I'll give you this. So you don't have that own stress around food and your own exhaustion around food, because it can be really draining. Yeah. To be constantly feel like you're on the beck of call with this 1-year-old demanding child yelling at you about wanting bickies.
So what we've got also for you today, we've mentioned the PDF of all of the handouts that match what we've talked about today, is available for you to download and print whenever you want. There's also an e-cookbook there. It's just got 5 recipes there that are the sorts of recipes that you can get back your time. So I love tray bakes, slow cooker, casseroles, curries, a range of different things like that you can have ready to go for dinner, but you basically takes you 5 minutes to prep them, and then you put them in, and all you've got to do is get it out and put it on the table, because these are the sort of meals that you can say they're meant to help you stop saying get out of the kitchen and actually let you get out of the kitchen, because you don't want to be in there all the time.
Yeah, it's really.
So what we'll do is, for everyone who is watching live, we have a chat box up. We'll be taking questions for another half an hour, and then we'll be reopening it again tonight at 8:30. And for anyone who has accessed this afterwards, you can contact us via our websites. Meg is at choosenutrition.com.au and I am playwithfood.com.au.
So we're going to just finally get to nutrition.
Sorry, I totally forgot.
Well, look, which is fine, because this is the problem with live things. It is, when I say it's not the place to start, that nutrition is not the place to start, because it's less important than the systems, I really mean it. Yes, we know a lot about how our bodies work best and the nutrients that we need and all of that, but you can have all the nutrition knowledge in the world and you can be providing the most perfectly balanced, toddler-friendly food and still have your child not eat it if this other stuff is just not working, because it's not about the food. Really not about the food. However, if we aren't, as the person who's responsible for providing what, if we aren't providing enough opportunities for the child to get that balance and to get what they need, then it's never going to happen. So I'm going to go through very quickly before we finish up what the average recommended intakes are for kids in the 1 to 3 age group, and it's the same for boys and girls. After the 4, it changes slightly. But this is more about opportunities to eat that food. So what I mean by that is they only need 1 serve of fruit in the day, and they need 1.5 serves of dairy. If at every meal and mid-meal they're being offered fruit and dairy, and they love fruit and dairy, they'll never take the opportunity to eat the other foods. So we need to think, okay, they only need 1 serve of fruit a day, and I know they're going to eat it, so I'll only offer it once a day, or possibly twice if there's no other preferred food that we can offer them at that meal. But the same with the dairy. It's these kids who love, they're having bottles and they're having yogurt and they're having cheese and not eating any other food. Well, we know that, okay, let's make sure we only offer them the dairy twice a day rather than at every meal and snack, to give them opportunity to feel hungry enough to explore other foods. So just you'll get the information in your printout of exactly what a serve is and how much that they need. But we need to know our bodies are really resilient. Childhood is a really, really small part of life, and the patterns that we're setting them up for is much, much more important than the food that's eaten in that period of time. And a lot of the hype and the stress about this nutrient and that nutrient and, oh, well, they're not going to reach their potential is coming from marketing. It's not actually coming from the science, and it's certainly not coming it's not coming from the work of Ellen Satter, which is, as I mentioned, the world leader, and in our guidelines. So nutrition matters, it really does, but it matters over a lifetime, not at any one time, and certainly not at any one meal.
Yeah, so focusing on getting expected mealtime behaviour is going to be so much more of a payoff later on than worrying about why that quinoa bar never gets eaten every day. So yeah, you've got another thing I thought I'd say, because say if you have a child who really only likes one food group, be mindful of, say, like for dairy, that example you used, you got 1.5 serves up your sleeve for the whole day. What I tended to do, I had a child who was quite into cheese. We would have at breakfast, she would have the dairy on her cereal or her Weet-Bix or something. This is sort of when she was 1. And then she would have maybe only 50 mils at lunch of milk and her cheese slice. And then it would let me give her another 50 to 100 mils after dinner. But it meant I wasn't actually filling her up on the dairy throughout the whole day, but she was still getting those opportunities to feel comfortable and happy with the mealtime, because she still had something there that she knew she liked. So then when the offerings of the vegetables were there, she wasn't full on the dairy, but she still got the chance to eat those.
And also it means the caregiver can feel less worried, because even though we know, people keep telling us, oh, toddlers eat overbalance over a few days and they'll balance their intake out, and if they have a period not eating much, they'll make up for it, which is all very true. I'm in the moment, I'm worried that this kid's not going, if this kid doesn't eat, this kid's not going to sleep tonight, and I'm tired, and I've got to get him up today, get tomorrow. So we understand there's a reality there. So knowing, okay, well, there's something there that she's going to eat, that's cool, but not as the only option for her. So a really helpful thing can be to help you build that list of what can I able, and this is looking at catering for their, not catering, considering their likes and their dislikes and their preferences and what they will eat, what they comfortably eat that isn't too stressful for them, but not pandering to it, not becoming a short order cook. So writing down over 3 or 4 days what they ate, not the amounts don't matter. You can build a list of what you might call sort of accepted foods or safe foods for them. And then when you are doing your meal planning what's going to be on the table in the middle, making sure there is something in there that they will choose. And it's not meaning that they get French fries every day or anything like that, but just knowing that they're going to be, there's something you can eat. And we always say to them, you don't have to eat. You've got to come to the table. You don't have to eat. But we know that there's going to be something on the table that is generally an accepted food or preferred food for them.
So there's a bit of a demarcation, especially in toddlerhood, about something that's super preferred and like the favorite thing, and actually just having things that they accept. So if they accept corn on the cob every 48 hours, so, not corn on the cob 4 times a day, but, every second day, it's good to have a corn on the cob there or whatever, because they actually accept that and quite like it. So that's fine.
Yeah, so by building that list, you can get a bit more flexibility about, what are we going to, what am I going to put on the table? Because kids will learn to eat what their parents eat. So by having them with family foods as often as possible, it's not always possible to, to sit down and eat with kids, but as many opportunities as possible to actually sit down and eat and model that kids grow up to eat the foods that their parents eat generally. So using that, not changing what you want to eat to fit the toddler, but teaching the toddler and helping them with the processes so that they join in the family meals.
Okay.
Cool. So I think that's all the stuff we really wanted to make sure we cover. As Snow mentioned, we're going to stay on the live chat for now. We'll answer some questions. But if you need or individual stuff, there's medical issues, growth concerns, weight concerns.
Lots of things that we would consider a red flag, where you're like, okay, a general webinar may help you a little bit, but you might actually want some more specialized information, especially if the food range is now under 20 foods and we're dropping them regularly, or if there is some medical complications on top of this, you probably need to seek a little bit more in-depth help.
But choose a couple of things from that you can give it a go. It might just be anchoring the feet, as simple as that. And have
start
a look.
with posture this week.
and then build on it. There is no magic wand. So I feel that say, oh, I'm tearing my hair out, my child won't eat anything. What can I do? There's lots you can do. It won't necessarily create an overnight change. We're looking for systems and setting them up in the right direction. And it's not about only cooking food that they'll eat.
Yeah. And working out, maybe even taking a step back and go, where have we crossed the boundaries in our responsibilities? Yeah. Even just taking a bit of time to reflect on that before you go in and make too many changes too quickly.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you have to do everything because you're doing a good job. You are the best person at feeding your child. You know them better than anyone else. So keep up the good work.
That's it.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thanks for stopping by.